Hey everyone, welcome to my new tutorial. Today we'll create this cute glowing cartoon mushroom scene, and the modeling will be pretty straightforward. Mostly it'll be about that lighting and atmosphere. And if you enjoy this video, please leave a like, it really helped my channel to grow. And if you're new to the channel and you'd like to see short content like this in the future, please hit that subscribe and the bell button if you want to get notified when I release something new. And if you're new to the world of 3D and Blender, and you want to become a 3D illustrator, go and check out my courses that are carefully designed to teach you beginner and intermediate skills in quickest and most effective way. For example, with the new Ultimate 3D bundle, you can go from simple cubic designs all the way to full character illustration in a matter of weeks. So if you're interested, please go check out the link in the description. Let's jump into empty Blender file, and first I'll just select everything, press X and hit delete. And now I'll press Shift A and let's start with circle. And now I will adjust the vertices to something lower, like 12. We'll use subdivision surface anyway. And now just tab in and we can start extruding. First of all, let's make this a little bit smaller. I'll press S and scale this down a tiny bit, and then press F to fill to create the face there. Now let's look from the side by pressing 3 on a numpad. And now I'll do first extrusion, so press E and extrude like this, and S to scale. So this will be the base of our mushroom, and now we can start extruding in different direction. And the easy way to do that is holding Ctrl and right clicking to the side, and your extrusion will tilt your base of extrusion and your extruded face as well. So press S, scale this down, and now let's do one more like this and press S, scale it down. So this should work just fine. Maybe we can press R and rotate this a little bit. And the next thing I want to do is press X and delete faces on top. I want this to be open. And now we can tab out and press Ctrl 2 to add subdivision modifier, right click and shade smooth. So this will be the base, so tab in and we can alt click this loop right here, hold Shift S and switch cursor to select it, and we can start a new circle right there. So tab out, press Shift A and add a circle. Now tab in and we can make this larger, press S, scale it up, and we can press E and extrude like this, make it larger. Let's look from the side by pressing 3, press E to extrude once again. You can press additionally Z if you want to go straight up, and now press S to scale it down, and we can press F to fill, and now additionally we can press Ctrl B to bevel this so it's more rounded. Now I will finish the bottom part here, so alt click the loop, press F to fill and Ctrl B again to bevel. And now I will add one more segment with mouse wheel, so we have some supporting loops there. And now let's go for a face select, or press 3, select this bottom face and press I to inset and push it up. So press G then Z and push it up like this. Okay, now select all. Let's look from the side and we can help ourselves by enabling X-ray view and just move this down so it sits on the origin point there. We can disable X-ray view and just rotate this a little bit. And of course here you can make some adjustments. For example, you can press S and then Z twice to scale it on its local Z axis and move it around so you have the shape you want. But if you change the scale in the object mode, don't forget to press Ctrl A and apply the scale. Okay, now we'll press Ctrl 2 to add subdivision modifier and right click shade smooth. So this is the mushroom, and now we'll create these dots. They'll be really easy. Shift right click here to move the cursor, press Shift A and let's add a cube. Now I'll tab in, scale this down, and now S, Z to scale on the Z axis to make this lower. Tab out, press Ctrl 2 to add subdivision modifier and right click shade smooth. So this will be enough, and the origin point is there in the middle, so it will snap nicely to the surface. Let's go to the snap settings, switch to face, and additionally enable align rotation to target and project individual elements. And now if you press G and hold Ctrl, you can snap it on the surface. So let's leave it somewhere here, and now we'll press Alt D to create a link duplicate of the dot. Hold Ctrl and move it somewhere else, and we can additionally press S to scale it down so we have some variation there. So now let's just duplicate a few of these dots around. And as you go towards the edge, you can make even smaller ones. Okay, something like this should be fine. Now just select all, shift click the base of the mushroom, press Ctrl P and set parent to object. This way we can move the whole mushroom at once. And now I want to create a duplicate of this, so press Alt D, Shift Z to move it on X and Y plane and move it here. Press S to scale it down, and now we can rotate it on a Z axis, so R, then Z and rotate. Something like that, and I want to move it closer to the original one and tilt it a little bit so it doesn't get in the way. Maybe make it even smaller, so we have kind of two mushrooms growing next to each other, just like that. Okay, and the next thing I want to have here is some like grass leaves growing from the bottom. So let's hold Shift S and switch cursor to world origin. Let's press Shift A and add a plane. I'll press G then Y to move it here and hit period on a numpad to focus our view there. Now tab in, press S then Y and scale it up just like that, and we'll create two more cuts. So Ctrl R and increase with the mouse wheel, confirm with the left click, right click to release, and we have some more geometry there. Press S then X to scale this down, and here as well. So we create the shape of the leaf. Now press Ctrl R to create a new loop right here, right click to release. Now select this edge right in the middle. If you can't select edges, make sure you're in the edge select mode. Press Ctrl B to bevel this, and we should have 3 segments from the last bevel. If you don't, adjust with the mouse wheel just like this. Now let's go here and enable auto merge. That'll make sure that if our vertices touch, they will merge. Now go for the vertex select this vertex right here, press G twice and just slide it all the way here. And let's do the same on the other side. And maybe we don't need to slide this all the way. I will leave it like this, so we have some flat geometry there. And now let's select these vertices in the middle by holding Shift and dragging the selection. Press G then Z and move it up, so we have some curvature there in place. And now go back to the edge select this edge in the middle, press G then Z and move it down. So this will be the shape of our leaf. Now let's tab out, press Ctrl 2 to add subdivision modifier, right click and shade smooth. So this looks quite okay, and now we'll just add some volume there. So let's go to the modifiers tab. Let's add modifier and we'll choose solidify here, and let's just select and drag it above the subdivision, and now we can adjust the thickness here. So let's do something like this. Okay, and the last part, I want to go for a side view by pressing 3 on a numpad, and now tab in, select all with A, press R to rotate this and G to move it up so the bottom is on the origin point. Now if we tab out, and I'll press Shift D to duplicate, R, Z to rotate around the Z axis, and we can press G then Shift Z to move it around a little bit, scale it down and scale it locally on X. So press S and X twice to make it a little bit wider. Don't forget to hit Ctrl A and apply the scale. And now we can create one more. So Shift D, R, Z and rotate it like that. And we can press R then X to rotate it down like that, make it smaller. So these will be our grass leaves, and now we can just select everything, shift click the original one which has the 0 rotation, and press Ctrl J to join them into a single object. We can make it smaller a little bit and bring it closer to our mushroom just like this. Now I'm looking for a camera view that I can use, and I think something like this looks okay. So I'll press Shift A and bring the camera in the scene, and now with the camera active I will hold Ctrl Alt and hit 0 on a numpad to move the camera to our viewport position. And now we can go to the output settings, change the ratio here, press G then Z twice to move the camera closer, or G to pan it around just like this. And now we can continue with our composition, so we can duplicate a few of these grass leaves around. So Alt D, Shift Z and move it towards the back here, and maybe rotate a little bit so we have a different view, and make it smaller. And maybe one more here in the front, something like this. We can of course change the rotation. Okay, so this is our composition. The one thing I miss here is a background, so let's press Shift A. Let's add a plane, tap in and make it larger. Now tab out. I'll bring up the side panel by pressing N, and now shift click the camera frame that will select the camera. And now in the item menu, I will right click the rotation and copy single to selected that will rotate the plane same as the camera. Now select the plane again, tab in, and in the edge select mode, select the far edge, press E then Z and extrude it up. Now select this corner edge again and press Ctrl B to bevel, and we'll increase the cuts with the mouse wheel just like that. Tab out, right click and shade smooth, so we have some smooth infinite background there. And let's now set some render preferences, so go to the render settings, and in the EV options I'll enable ambient occlusion, bloom, screen space reflection, and now I'll switch to the cycles. That's the one I'll be used for the final rendering. The EV will be for just the better previews, and I'll switch to GPU and enable denoising for both viewport and render, and I'll reduce max samples to something like 512 for the render settings. That'll be just fine for now if we are not doing the final render. And now in the performance tab, I'll reduce the tile size to 512. I found it will save me like few seconds. Now let's hold Z and switch to the material preview, and let's add some colors to our scene. So with the background selected, let's go to the materials tab and create new material. And now let's set this to some really dark blue or violet color, something like that. And we can adjust this later, of course. And let's bring the roughness all the way up. Now select the mushroom and let's add some red color with a hint of pink, maybe something like that should work. And here I want to introduce some subsurface scattering here. That will basically just let some of the light inside and create some bounces, and it will create the kind of translucency. If you, for example, put your finger over a light bulb, make sure it's not hot, you will see the light coming through that subsurface scattering. So let's set up some subsurface color here. It can be slightly different, maybe a little bit more pink there for the subsurface and a little bit more red for the surface, and I will enter 0.5 for the subsurface. And you will see EV will try to simulate this as well. And now let's increase the roughness a little bit here, and that should work just fine for the red material. Now let's select the base of the mushroom. Let's create a new material there. Let's select some color, and I'll go for a little bit of a beige tone here, something like that. Let's increase the roughness, and I'll select similar color to the subsurface as well, and bring up the value same as with the top of the mushroom. Now let's select the grass and let's create a little bit of a green / blue color, something like this. That will work nicely with the violet background. And we can introduce some subsurface color here as well. It can be maybe more green a little bit, so we'll get that flashes of green inside when the light goes through. And we can enter something like 0.1. This doesn't have to be so strong. So that's for the colors. And now select the dot and we'll create a new material. This will be emissive material. So let's scroll down, and in the emission, let's choose some violet color just like this and increase the strength to something like 3 or maybe even 5. Let's see how that works. Okay, and now the most important thing, the lighting. I want this scene to be dark, you know, glowy, with those magical violet tones. So first of all, let's create some backlight here, and I'll press Shift A and add a light. I'll pick area light, press G then Z and move it up. Now let's hit period on a numpad to switch pivot to 3D cursor. Let's press R, X and 45. Let's enter minus, so it's in the other direction. Let's confirm, and R, Z to rotate it opposite to the camera like this, and just drag this corner here to make it a little bit larger. And we can press G then Z twice to bring it a little bit more back. And now to actually see what the light does, let's go here and enable scene lights and scene worlds for the EV preview. And we'll need to ramp this light up, so let's enter something really strong like 1500. And this number should be relative to the scale of your scene. I really didn't mind the scale, so if we look here, the mushroom is high, something like 4 or even 5 meters here, so that's why I'm choosing these strong numbers. Depending on the scale of your objects, you might go lower or even higher with your light values. So let's continue with the lighting, and I want to introduce some blue light here to the scene, maybe a little bit of a cyan tone, and bring this even more up so we cover the whole camera area. And now let's hit Ctrl B to limit our render view to only the camera bounds, And now we can switch to the render preview, and this is actually the cycles preview with all of that subsurface scattering. And this looks fine so far, but it's a little bit dull still, and there are really strong shadows. So let's go to the world settings and let's bring up the world value and the color so it blends nicely here. And now I'll press Shift A and add another area light, press G then Z and move it up like this. I want some top down lighting as well, but make it larger. I don't want it to create sharp shadows. And let's set it to something like 500, and that will create this nice light coming from top. And now let's select the backlight, press Shift D to duplicate, RZ to rotate around the Z axis, RX twice to bring it down around its local X axis, and bring it closer by pressing G and Z twice. And now we can reduce the value to something like 500 and change the color to something more neutral, and just try to rotate it around the scene to create a little bit of this light coming from the side. I think it will help to bring out the shape of the objects a little bit more. And now you can see how this subsurface scattering is starting to work on those objects when there are actually light shining through. And now let's press Shift A and add a point light. This is the final light I want to introduce, and there'll be some strong point light behind our objects to really separate it from the background and create nice background gradients. So let's press G then Shift Z to move it back a little bit, press G then Z, move it up. And now let's set it to something really strong like 2000 maybe, and let's increase the radius to 1. I don't want these shadows to be so sharp, maybe even 2. Let's see how this works. Okay, that should be fine. And now you can see that subsurface scattering really coming through on these other objects on the mushroom as well. Okay, and now if you wish, you can play with the color, you know, to give this some atmosphere, some different tones. I like the colors we had before, so I will leave it mostly neutral here, maybe a hint of a blue. And now let's go to the render settings, color management, and I want to change the contrast settings to something like medium high or even high. Let's see how that looks, and bring out the exposure so we have this nice vibrant scene here. This is really important settings. Always try to play around with that, and if you find out that you need to go too high on the exposure, that means your lighting in the scene is a little bit low, so you probably need to ramp up your lights a little bit. If you need 2, 3, even 5 exposure, then it's better to go and relight your scene a little bit. But if it's like 1 or 2 exposure to make this pop up a little bit more, that's totally fine, and you should absolutely try to play with those settings. And finally, I want to do this fun little thing. I want to paint some eyes on the mushroom that will kind of remind of some Nintendo games, you know, these mushrooms in Super Mario games. So I think it will be a nice touch. So first of all, we'll need some UVs. I will switch this to solid view, select the base of a mushroom and go to the UV editing. And first of all, I'll need to create some seams here. So with the edge select active, I'll alt click this back edge and just press U and mark seam, and alt click the bottom loop, press U and mark seam as well, press A, select U and unwrap, and this will work just fine for our base texture. Now let's go to the texture paint mode, and first of all we'll need to create some texture. But before we create textures, let's go to the material settings, hover over the base color, press Ctrl C to copy it. And now let's switch back to the painting tools. Let's hit plus on the textures and create a new texture in the base color channel, and Ctrl V the color here. And now let's just enter something like 2K resolution here so it has a nice definition, and we can hit OK. That will create the texture for us. And now let's just change the color to black, press F to change the diameter of the brush. Let's hit 0 so we can see where the camera is, and now you can just paint. Let me hit Ctrl Z, and I think it's a little bit blurry, so let's scroll down a little bit, and in the fall off section of the brush I will change this to a really sharp brush, but then modify it a little bit. So let's bring this down, and here I will create this kind of a smooth fall off at the end. And additionally we can go to stroke and help ourselves by enabling stabilizing stroke, and it will help you with straight lines like this. Okay, so let's paint in some eyes. And now one important thing, we created the texture, but it isn't saved. So to be able to save the texture, go here in the texture view panel and just choose it from the list right there. And you will see there are small asterisks here. You need to go to the image and save, or you can hover here and press Alt S, and that will ask you for the location to save the texture file. And after that, it's persistent and you will not lose it. So let's go back to the layout view and preview our render. And you can see this is a little bit soft, and that's because there's this subsurface settings. So let's go to the shading workspace. And here you can see the texture we created, and you can just connect it to the subsurface channel as well. And that will make it stronger. So that's the final illustration for you. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please leave that like, it will really help me. And again, if you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe. Thank you all for watching and have a wonderful day.